Saram everyone and welcome to this final part of the satsang that we started way back in April. How can we experience Sai Sannidhi? We contemplated on what we have now as Bhagawan's gifts when we do not have his physical form. And in one session we focused on the gift of his name and form. In the second session, we moved on to meditate on his life story. In the third session, we went on to glorify and focus on the most precious kshetra, the Prasanthi Nilayam, the divine heaven that he has given us. All of this happened because the avatar donned a human frame. And in the previous session, we came to the last and most important gift that Bhagawan has given us. And it is the gift of his message. And in the previous session, for an hour or more, we spent contemplating on what this whole body of message consists of. How can we internalize? How can we take those few steps to practice? What are the challenges? How sometimes we can get confused. We get confused about the different messages that he has said. How sometimes there are contradictions, and how do we resolve those issues, dilemmas, and move on? And as we ended the session, we came to this particular problem that sometimes we face in our lives when we want to practice Swami's teachings. We feel intimidated looking at the expectation that Bhagavan has from us. I have often found some devotees tell me that we listen to Bhagavan's discourse. In fact, if I don't get sleep, it is his message that, puts me to sleep. But, if you ask me to practice everything, it is so difficult. Because the kind of things that Swami is telling are so idealistic. I don't think I will ever become a Tyagaraja. I will become a Sakubai, or I'll become a Hanuman. It's really too much to ask from myself. I don't know if I will ever make that cut. So sometimes we have these feelings, it is like an Everest. Can I ever climb? Should I even try doing it? Is it worth that effort? So probably today we will spend some time on how do we deal with these moments which sometimes incapacitate us to walk on this path. And I think maybe we start with this and then we'll move on to the different messages that Swami has given and how this message can actually become a part of our lives. Isn't it, Prem? Sometimes we do have these challenges, isn't it?
Absolutely. And even as you're narrating that, I'm sure most of Swami's devotees will be able to relate to that. Because one thing which I often say is, till you come to Swami, you are pretty good, right? Because you are seeing yourself in the way you judge yourself. And everyone is perfect in their own way. But when you come to Swami, you look at yourself in Swami's light, and that's when you find all the flaws in you. And that is it sucks your confidence, right? And as you said, the other aspect about Swami's message itself is that Swami ensures that there is no dilution in the level of his delivery. When he speaks in his discourses, he always gives us the ultimate. Because if there is dilution when he speaks, by the time we put it into practice, you can imagine what would happen to it. So that is why Swami is, in a way, unforgiving when he is putting forth what he expects out of us. Right. But at the same time, that makes it very daunting to look at it. And that is why, again, you have to look at Swami's message for the inspiration too. Where how do you deal with that? How do you look at Swami's message? And as they can say, bite as much as you can chew. Right? Finally, it comes down to that. Yes. How do you approach Swami's message in that manner? And I think to deal with that, we have two more younger brothers with us who are joining us today, just like last week. Isn't it? We have Brother Chandrahas and Brother Santosh. Chandrahas, research scholar from the Department of Management and Commerce, and Santosh is from the Department of Physics. So we are going to look at this in our own little learnings. There is no ultimate and absolute way of doing this. We have, in our own humble way, tried and been frustrated, been disappointed with ourselves, but at the same time encouraged in our own way by Swami. So we're going to share our learnings and this whole process of how do we internalize Swami's message.
So what was your experience, Brother Santosh, when you came to know Bhagawan's teachings and when you first time got exposed to his messages? Did you anytime have that feeling that I don't know if I will ever be able to reach that stage?
Yeah, exactly. Because let me start with an experience that I heard when I was in Vrindavan. It was narrated by one of our teachers from the Vrindavan hostel. So that was more of an eye-opener, like an experience for me. That's when my antenna stood up and I felt like, oh no, I cannot be careless, or I can't have the what we typically call the chalta hai attitude. Right. So I need to focus. So it was summer course time, and this particular teacher, his name is Rajkumar Jain sir, who's currently still working in the Department of Physics, Vrindavan campus. So he narrated this experience. So before summer course time, he and a couple of students were in the stock room checking out the pens and the notebooks that are generally handed over for the students who are participating in the summer course. So they check out whether the pens write, refills, etc., etc. And then while they were doing this, Swami came in. And then he was asking, what are you doing? They told Swami, we are just checking if the pens write, whether the refills are good. And Swami took one pen and started writing. It didn't write. And then Swami say, see Da, you are like these refills. So if you don't write, how much ever hard I try, I cannot use you. So if I can't use you, I'll have to replace this refill with some other refill. So you should be, and then he's actually stopped there and went. And then when I heard this, for me it was like, oh my God, means I need to be an instrument and at the same time a worthy instrument. I need to put into practice whatever he says and come up to his expectations. But more often than not, the biggest doubt that comes is his expectations are so high that can I ever meet it? Can I ever come near it at least? And that's when so many times dejection happens and we fall in our own eyes. But personally, the way I tackle that particular situation is that whenever these things strike me, I feel the only thing that can lift me up and still fight to go there is Swami's love for me first. Means even after all my faults, etc., he still loves for who I am and whom I am becoming. So Swami's love for me and my love for Swami. So it's like a cycle, a good vicious cycle, if I can call it, the cycle that fuels us. So I think that is what will keep us ever engaging in this constant fight to come up to his expectations.
Wow. One other point that comes to my mind is, even as you were telling the example of that refill, the beauty of Swami is the ability to give multiple messages in the same, through a similar incident. There was another episode very similar to this where they were checking pens, and I think one of the teachers were, as we often do, you just doodle, you just scribble and see whether it works. And Swami was seeing this site and Swami said, what are you doing? He said, Swami, I'm just checking what the pen writes. Why do you have to scribble? Why can't you write Sai Ram? Right? Swami said, even that is an opportunity for Namasmarana. The different aspect of Swami's message where every situation or circumstance becomes a means for Swami to deliver a message.
The point, as Swami is saying, see, if you don't write, then I cannot use you. And I think that's very painful for us, right? We want to be used by the Lord. And for that, whatever is needed, we want to do. And as you said, we get that strength to do because of our love for him. Exactly. And we know that he loves us. How has been your experience, brother? Have you any time felt that, it's too much for me to really assimilate and live up to what Swami has said?
Yeah, brother, actually, my tryst with Swami's literature started at a very young age because I was born and brought up in a devotee family. Especially with respect to the specific book Jnana Vahini written by Swami. I remember the first time I read the book was 12 years ago. And I read the book the way it is specifically not supposed to be read. I read it end to end in one sitting and naturally nothing stuck in my head.
But syllabus was completed.
Yes, I was feeling happy that the syllabus is complete. But one specific line in the book remained with me was what Swami said is the spiritual discipline that Ramana Maharshi taught his disciples, the practice of who am I, is the easiest of all disciplines.
Easiest of
All disciplines. That's what Swami mentions in the book. So that stuck with me. And the best thing is, because I didn't discuss this with anybody else at that point of time, I really believed that is the easiest thing. I didn't try out anything else, so I thought it is easy. So when I joined for my MBA program in 2015, a few months into the program, in one of the classes, Professor Bhagya sir, as we all lovingly call him, he mentioned to us about one instance where Swami, in an interview room, he spoke to Bhagya sir about this practice of who am I and asked him to inquire within. So I remembered this one line from Jnanamani and I thought, let me ask Bhagya sir about this. And that started my kind of association with Bhagya sir, wherein for several hours at a stretch, I used to ask him about what is this practice of who am I? What is self-inquiry? How do I go within? What is Jnana all about? And the process of contemplating on Swami's message really started. Then I started practicing self-inquiry. A few months went on. Then I again picked up this book. And then one of the lines in the first paragraph struck me. Swami says, knowledge can be attained by uninterrupted self-inquiry. So I thought, okay, you cannot do it for 5 minutes a day, you have to do it properly. So I started practicing diligently whenever I had time during a tea break, whenever we are in line for lunch, I started practicing. Then I very clearly remember, it was on February 14, 2016, I was sitting in Saikulund Hall. Bhajans were going on and I was contemplating who am I. And I was trying to go to the source of who I really am. And as I was practicing it, suddenly the illusion of the individual self, that there is an individual within this body, that vanished. And the illusion, the experience remained for a few minutes. I came back to hostel. The individual self was still not there. Then after a few minutes, it came back. The experience was so powerful that it changed me completely. I realized that everybody is the embodiment of the same self. Then I thought, okay, this is a good experience. So what does Swami say? So after a few weeks, then I again read the Jnanavahini. There Swami is, in the first paragraph itself, mind you, Swami is telling, only when you obtain full knowledge will you get moksha or liberation. So just a temporary experience is not enough, okay? This is not your end of journey. So I said, okay, I should be humble. So let me practice a little more. Then it went on and went on and went on. 3 years passed. For some reason or the other, I had given up this practice of self-inquiry. Then I again read this book. And the final line of the first paragraph again struck me, where Swami says, once you obtain this Atmic knowledge, it is very important to follow the path of Brahman and, put this act according to this new wisdom. I was wondering, what does it mean? Yeah? I mean, okay, there is no individual self. Everybody is the same. When I contemplated more and more, I realized that it's all about treating everybody with the reverence and love that all are the embodiments of same divinity. So the point that I'm trying to drive home is that to understand just the first paragraph of Jnanavahini, it has taken me about 12 years of my life. And I would still say that I'm just scratching the surface of the first paragraph. So I feel like Brother Anosh mentioned in the last satsang, I mean, just Shravanam is not enough. Shravanam should be followed by Mananam, contemplation, and sincere practice, Nididhyasanam. Only then we can even hope to understand Swami's teachings. And that is when we will really get to experience the joy of Swami's teachings.
Right. If anybody was confident that they've read the Jnanavahini, you have made it very difficult for them. But I think what's important is that there is so much in every line of Swami, what he has written, every paragraph, that to complete everything is not really the task at hand.
Yes.
but just that one line is enough to contemplate and draw
more
the
often
wisdom.
than not, whenever we feel we understand it, that's when Swami again gives a thing that
Gives a
no, there's
challenge.
some more to dig.
I think this is a common experience for all. Anybody who has opened Satya Sai Speaks or opened any Vahini, you open it now, it gives you a meaning. And you had opened it 10 years ago, it meant something. And you'll open it 10 years later and it will mean you and it'll give you completely different meaning. And I think that is what the master and the mystery of his message is all about. And it all depends on your level of evolution. And master is continuously only want to take you higher, and everything that is needed for you to go higher is already there. It's a question of you putting that effort, and then obviously you put that one step, as we have discussed before. He's going to take 99 steps, and talking about this self-inquiry and putting this effort, sometimes it does happen, isn't it? We feel that we have been in bhajans for 20 years, 30 years, we have been doing this sadhana. I have been doing seva for 3 decades. I never missed Nagar Sankirtan, in all the 20 years that I've stayed. So I have definitely grown spiritually. You have that kind of thoughts many times. In fact, there were 2 sisters way back in the 50s, and they were very sincere spiritual aspirants, and they would do all the sadhana, chanting, bhajans, the Prasanthi schedule of those days. And Swami used to spend a lot of time with them. And one day Bhagawan came to their room, and Swami said, all this sadhana that you have done is not helping you to reach the stage where you should actually be. All your chanting and bhajan is not taking you where you should be. They said, Swami, we are doing everything. Swami, what else we should do? And Swami said, what you are doing is only sadhana. Along with sadhana, you should also do self-analysis. Swami said, in the initial stages, sadhana is fine. But with time, your self-analysis should become a greater component. You should come to a stage where 3/4 is self-analysis. Sadhana is just 1/4. So you should constantly keep asking about everything that you're doing in your life. How I speak, what am I eating, what am I listening? Every act that I'm doing, is it spiritual? Is it taking me closer to God? Is it purifying me? So this contemplation should happen constantly. So I'm saying only this contemplation, and every activity that you do, you should check it with the touchstone of your love. I said this analysis along with sadhana will take you higher. So I think as we go through these messages of Bhagavan, as we read his Vahinis, or as we practice his a particular teaching that he has mentioned in a discourse, or we listen to some direction Swami gave in a formal, informal conversation, I think this whole process of sadhana coupled with self-analysis becomes so important. And I think if we have this, then we will not find it so challenging. I think we think it's so difficult for us. I think if we do with that conscious feeling of why am I doing whatever I am doing, what is the whole purpose of what I am doing, I think if that consciousness is there, then we will not be so bothered and so worried and so dispirited with the message. I think the message will start giving us energy, isn't it?
Right. Even as you were narrating that, sometime back I was thinking about this Ashtotram. There is this name of Swami, Sulabha Prasannaya Namah. And I was thinking, Swami, in which angle are you Sulabha Prasannaya? It is so difficult to please you. Physically, yes, to get Swami's attention, to get Swami to speak to you. And the other thing is spiritually, of course, that's what we're talking about. It's so difficult. How do we master this? Because it sometimes appears that nothing is good enough for Swami. Right? You control your anger, then Swami says you have to, there's another mastery that you have to focus on. So it looks like it's so difficult. And I was wondering, why is Swami called Sulabha Prasannaya Namah? The phrase that we use, a coinage that we use to say that something is easy, we say it's child's play, right? So when you say that it is easy to please Swami, it means that it is as easy to please Swami for a child as it is for a scholar. Right? As easy it is to please Swami for somebody who's unread as it is for someone who is very accomplished, educated. That is why he is Sulabha Prasannaya Namaha. And we are not here to master something or to get better than somebody else. We are here to please Swami. And the idea of going back to Swami's message is, how do I please Swami? And for that, it only requires that first step.
Yes.
Right? The analogy that Swami gives about the lantern. You might have a jungle that is 2 miles across that you have to traverse. But all you need is a lantern that shows you 2 steps ahead.
Yes.
That is more than enough.
Yes.
And always it is just that one step taking across. As one's going through this discourse that Swami is giving in the school hostel. Imagine, it's a discourse given to higher secondary school boys, and Swami is talking about Ashtanga Yoga. And, the moment you say Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga or yoga, you think about Samadhi. Right? When will I reach that Samadhi? And then Swami so beautifully breaks down that discourse. Swami says Ashtanga Yoga, there are 8 steps. Swami says, forget about the last 3. Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi, forget about that. Forget about Pranayama, Asana. Then Swami says Yama, Niyama. Right? Yama, Niyama is about disciplines that relate to living in society. Swami says, forget even Niyama. For this modern world, just Yama is enough. Swami says, and then he goes on to speak about the 5 aspects of Yama, Ahimsa, Sathya, Asteya, and Aparigraha. And Swami says, for this modern world, the first step of Ashtanga Yoga is enough. Right? If you take, focus on this, all human values are covered in this, and that is more than enough. I mean, how much more simpler Swami can make it. I think this is so that we don't get daunted about the whole journey and look at the whole thing and say, oh, how am I going to do this? It really doesn't matter. You just have to take a step ahead, and all the encouragement that is required, I think, is there in the message itself. Right? So we were talking about the challenges, and I think we will leave it to each one of the listeners to experiment in their own way, not to give up, as Brother Santosh so beautifully said. The inspiration is the love. At the end of the day, out of your love for Swami, you should be able to take up whatever little of Swami's message and try to practice it. The other aspect that we wanted to dwell upon is, the last time when we were here, we were talking about Swami's discourses, Swami's Vahinis. The sweet thing about Swami's avatar is that every corner of the mandir becomes a place where he can deliver the most profoundest of messages. It could be the green room of the auditorium.
Yes.
It could be the kitchen. It could be the dining hall. It could be the portico, as we often say. The number of hours that Swami has just stood in that veranda between boys and teachers and VIPs, and has spent so much time speaking. So we wanted to get together and speak about few aspects of Swami's message that he gave in a very casual manner, but it was not at all casual from the spiritual point of view. So each one of us, probably we can come up with something. We can start with Santosh.
Yeah, sure. So I'm reminded of this one beautiful experience. Again, for me personally, it was an eye-opener, because generally I tend to get relaxed, then suddenly some message like this comes and says, brother, wake up, you're on the wrong path. So this happened, this experience happened in the 3rd block of Kulwant Hall, where Swami's golden chariot is kept, that particular area. So, and the situation where it came to me, I was thinking, okay, wherever I see Swami's photograph, he's smiling. So I was thinking, okay, he's happy with me. Whatever I do, he's happy with me, and I can be free with him and things like that. So then when this experience came, I was like, oh my God, no. Means Swami is smiling, but then he's actually wanting us to improve. So in this, he's interacting with some of the alumni, and he just says 2 sentences, and it just goes deep in us. He says, you want, and I quote Swami, you want me to give value to your prayers, but how can I give value to your prayers if you don't give value to my words? So I think more than me saying, let's hear Swami himself saying this. We have the video clip. So let's hear Swami himself saying this.
Sure.
job, any course, not race course. Either हमारा बात वैल्यू देना, तुम्हारे प्रेम में वैल्यू देना, हमारे बात वैल्यू नहीं देना, तुम्हारे कैसे वैल्यू दे सकते?
So every time I see this, I kind of press my restart button and say, okay, from now on, let me do it. And I think that's actually an important component for us, because it's not possible for us to start and think that we will go on a smooth, straight road towards the journey. It's not possible. So many obstacles, so many detours. And it is very important for us to coarsely remanure our path and go ahead. And again, as I told previously, there will come times where we feel low or we feel we will not be able to reach. And I think one particular thing, Swami has told about Deva Preeti, Papa Preeti and Sangha Niti. I think the first one is enough for us to just go on the journey. Deva Preeti.
Love for God, fear of sin, morality in society.
So, and just to elaborate on this point, like how he said about how we need to be like a child to reach Swami faster. So this experience was narrated to us by our Shailesh sir, who is in the hostel, physics department. So this was during the board exam, 12th class board exams, many years back. So there was this boy who was writing the exam, and generally when we have board exam, there will be an external examiner who comes for checking the proceedings of the exam. So as you know, in Swami's institution, everything is perfect and pin drop silence. Everybody is focusing on their answer script and writing. So this particular external examiner was a bit surprised, because so many other places, we are used to so many other things which are not so good while invigilating. So he was a little surprised, and he was going around, and then he came next to this boy, and then he just made a passing remark saying, in this place, people are all God-fearing. Immediately, this boy who was writing stopped, looked at this particular person and said, no, sir, we are not God-fearing, we are God-loving. Wow. I mean, it was so spontaneous, and it becomes such an important integral part of us. Means when we love God, we can do anything, and we will do anything for Him.
Wow. So, that love gives all the power.
Exactly.
In fact, Prem, when you were talking about how Swami said only one aspect is enough of this niyama to practice, I was reminded of the summer course. In the earlier years, Swami used to give a lot of other students also to participate in the summer course. And one of the speakers in the summer course talks about Kundalini Yoga. And one of the students got very inspired with that, the whole aspect of Kundalini Yoga and all the chakras rising and Sahasrara. It's very fascinating. And he felt that is the spiritual path. And so he actually got so motivated with that, he skipped one of the summer course sessions. He went to the city, bought a thick volume on Kundalini Yoga. And, Swami's right there giving discourses. And the next day in the discourse, even as Bhagawan was giving his series, generally summer course has a different series, but suddenly Swami stops that series and Swami says there are some students who think that they need to do Kundalini Yoga, that this is what will give them the spiritual high. Swami says, for this time and for this age, you don't have to do any of those practices. You need teachers who can guide you well if you want to do any of those practices. For all these students, for all the devotees, you don't need to engage in any of these practices. All you have to do is, if you are a member of the Samiti, just do whatever you are asked to do in the Samiti in the right spirit. So if everything is mandated, whatever is needed for your spiritual growth has already been laid down there. Just do that much. That is enough for you.
In fact, that is one of the challenges we probably have not discussed today. Some people find that Swami's message is too simple. There are some spiritual aspirants who say there is no Kundalini Yoga in this, and there's a devotee who came and told me, Swami has not spoken enough about Patanjali's yoga. I said, why should he? He's the avatar, he knows what's best. Right? So that becomes one of the challenges. Yes. And that is why in a very casual conversation, if Swami says something, you tend to overlook it. Yes. Something that our elders always tell is no word of Swami is casual. Yes. That you have to hold on to it, hang on to it, and try to think about that. So
actually, it's very true, brother. Actually, I still remember Sanjay Sani, sir, who is the controller of examinations. He shared an experience where Swami told students, if you really love me, all you have to do is just follow the hostel schedule. That's enough. You don't have to do any great sadhana. I mean, when I hear of all these things, I feel that, Swami uses all these things not as a reason to give his grace. It's just an excuse to give his grace. Like, you do this much, that is enough for me. I'll give you bountiful amount of grace. And I'm also reminded of an incident where a casual conversation is taking place between Swami and a Western devotee. The lady is from the United States, and she has come to Prasanthi Nilayam several times, and this doubt has been breeding in her mind for several years. What she's been observing is that a lot of devotees try to vie for the first line. Because in our Hindu tradition also, after visiting any temple, we say we got good darshan, we say. So people expect that if they sit in the first line, they'll get better darshan of Swami. So the doubt that this lady had in her mind was, who gets the best possible darshan, Swami? And Swami gave her an interview. And in the interview room, she had this opportunity to ask this question to Swami. Swami, who gets the best possible darshan? Is it the person who's sitting in the first line, or I've been given this chance, interview chance? Do I get the best possible darshan? Then Swami smiled and looked at her, gave a pause and answered, whoever is internally connected to me, and when they look at my form, whether they're sitting in the first line or in the last line, or whether they're 2,000 miles away in their home and they're looking at my photograph, they get the best possible darshan. Wow, what a beautiful revelation. I feel it is still applicable, even recently IPL was going on, and Dhoni usually talks about the controllables, I mean, like, if we take care of the controllables, we don't have to worry about the result.
Right.
Result will take care of itself. I feel whether Swami will talk to us, come in dream, all that is not in our hands. But the controllable is our connect to Swami within.
Wow, I mean, talking about connecting to Swami 2,000 miles away, I was reminded of, again, something that happened probably in the 70s. So Swami goes to this lady, and Swami tells her, your mother has remarried. And she's completely very disturbed. Immediately she says, no, Swami, this is not possible. But Swami comes back to her, no, your mother has remarried. And she's unable to accept it. Swami tells it the third time. And now she feels maybe she should not contest it. I mean, third time Swami is telling this. And so much of dilemma going on in the mind, like, how can this happen? It's not possible for my mother to do a thing like that. And so immediately after the darshan, she goes outside, and not that there's a mobile phone, so she does a call. And mother picks up the phone and she says, Mother, is everything fine? Are you okay?
How do you even ask?
True. And then she says, this is what Swami told me and I don't know what to make of it. She's almost teary-eyed. And she says, child, just now I was praying so intently to Bhagawan, and I just told Swami, my allegiance to you, my devotion to you, that is first. Everything else in my life, Swami, comes after that only. You are everything and you are first for me. My husband, my daughter, my friends, everyone, they come after that. So she had made that intense internal prayer to Swami. And here Bhagavan is telling, if you have told me that I am only yours, here Bhagavan in his own way is communicating, see, then I will also tell you that you are only mine.
The most supreme of wedding vows, isn't it?
Yeah. Most supreme of wedding vows, absolutely.
Very true. Distance and nothing matters to Swami, right? Talking about the various casual ways by which Swami can give a message. I'm reminded of something that happened during one of the drama practice sessions. I think in the year 1999, Swami wanted a drama where it was based, the central scene in that whole drama was that of the Pandavas, right? So Swami was very particular about how they were dressed, where they would get their costumes from, their jewels, their crown and all that. And finally, after a lot of struggle, they got some good costumes. And Swami was in the Purnachandra auditorium. Swami wanted them to dress up in the costume and come in front of him so that he can see and say that, okay, this is fine. Let's go with this costume. And Swami patiently waited when I think it took 45 minutes to 1 hour for all of them to get dressed and wear all the jewels and come in front of Swami. And Swami looked at all of them and Swami said, now it looks good. This is how you should all be dressed and these costumes are nice. And then Swami said, okay, you get dressed back into your whites and come. Swami wanted to spend some time with them. So they went and within about 3-4 minutes, they were back around Swami. Swami said, hey, Aipoinda, have you already done? Have you already come out of your costumes? Then Swami said, see how beautiful this is. To put on, it takes so much time. To give up, it is so easy. Right? What a beautiful and profound message in a simple conversation. Like another episode that one of the seniors were narrating, again, this is in the portico. I don't know, those pillars of the portico, how many such conversations they've been privy to. Swami is coming for darshan, and there were 2 boys sitting on either side, and one was holding a handkerchief up to Swami. We all know that Swami might materialize vibhuti, or sometimes Swami would just wipe his face and immediately one of the students would hand a handkerchief to Swami. And the other side, there was another student sitting, almost similar pose, but he was holding a letter. Right? So both holding their hands up, one with a letter and one with a handkerchief. And Swami comes up to them, Swami looks at both. And Swami takes the letter, then takes the handkerchief, wipes his face and gives it back. And then makes this beautiful statement. He said, hand over grief, hanker for chief.
Oh my God.
Then you will be always in bliss. What a beautiful play of words. He says, hand over your grief, hanker for the chief.
Wow. Amazing.
Right? It's a simple a moment just literally captured in eternity. And what a profound message. Hand over your grief to Swami and hanker only for him. How beautiful is that?
Beautiful.
Right?
I mean, just like how when Swami created once the Kohinoor diamond, and everyone got so fascinated with that. And Swami said, "Kya tum hira ko dekhta hai?" Hero idhar hai.
Hira means diamond.
Yeah.
Right.
Hira in Hindi means diamond. And so Swami saying, you're so enamored with the creation, with that Kohinoor diamond when the hero is here. I think never Bhagawan lost an opportunity to give us a lesson in any of these so-called informal moments, isn't it, brother?
True, brother.
I think there are so many such instances when you think about, be it in the play field, be it in the kitchen, be it in the dining hall, anything comes to you, mind.
I remember one very informal interaction that Swami had with our institute boys. The speciality, as Anosh brother mentioned, is when Swami interacts with students, he will drive home several messages in a very short conversation.
Yeah.
So this was during the 75th birthday time, and boys were all sitting and Swami came for darshan, and he started interacting with them. And as he's interacting, this is how Swami starts the conversation. Swami says, "Sigguledu," which means no shame, no shame. So he says, see boys, you're always spending your time in having food, playing. Look at Anantapur girls, what they're doing. The messengers of Mother Sai alumni, for 75th birthday, they have arranged 3,000 rice bags, 3,000 bags of vegetables. They want to serve in 75 villages, They even wanted to give 75,000 saris and dhotis. I refused, Just by speaking to them, I'm so happy. What are you guys doing? And the thing is, Swami spoke all this in Telugu. So with a twinkle in his eyes, speaking everything in Telugu, he looked at a boy who doesn't know a word of Telugu and who did not understand anything that Swami spoke. And he looked at the boy and said, "Hey boy, what are you going to do today?" The boy innocently replied, "Swami, we will be playing football, Swami." All laughed. Then Swami said, what is this? Always playing football, volleyball, Sugriva ball. What is this? Then Swami became a little serious and said, "See, you are playing football. you play with an inflated ball, right? So the inflated air inside the football is like ego. As long as there is air inside the ball, everyone will be kicking you around. But once the air is removed, the ego is removed from within you, you will be picked up in hands. And Swami pointed at his heart and he didn't say anything, but he said, as if to say that, you will be in my heart if the ego is removed. And he also said, see, in football, everybody doesn't just go chasing behind the ball. Everybody have their own positions. And Swami left it at that, but I feel the way we can interpret it is, we very often we tend to compare our lives, our salary with somebody else, our position in life with somebody else. I feel we don't need to do any of that. Everything will happen at the right time. All we have to ask and pray to Swami is, what is my role in this game of life? And am I playing it to the expectations of Swami?
Wow, I think it's very beautiful talking about our role in the game of life. There was once in Kodaikanal, this little question answer session with Bhagawan, and so one boy new to Swami and his ways and his teachings, he said, Swami, if someone murders someone else, so it is that person's karma to die and it is this person's karma to kill. So why should he be facing the consequences? Because it's just karma. And Swami said, you play football? I said, yes, Swami. So what happens in a football field? You are asked to play within the perimeter, a certain perimeter of the ground. And you are asked to play with your leg, not with your hands. There are so many such rules about how you should play this game. And with whom you play, that is also fixed. Against whom you will play, that is also fixed. But how you play is in your hands. You can, even if you are a goalkeeper, how alert you are, how much you are observing, how intently you are watching the flow of the game, and how many occasions you are able to save depends on you. If you're a forward, it depends on how aggressive you are, how you're able to think of the strategies, how to win the game, whether you're able to score a goal, whether you're all the time committing flaws. So it's the same in life, Swami said. See, in our life also, it is decided about the people with whom you're going to work with. Who are going to be your parents, who are going to be your siblings, the people you're going to play with in life. That is all there. And the parameters, where you are born. So there are a lot of things that are fixed, but at the same time, there are certain things that are not fixed. Against whom you are playing, that is also fixed. Who is going to be your, your boss, or who is going to be in your social circle. But how you play your game life, Swami says, that is completely dependent on you, and on that depends multiple destinies. Just like the game can go in any direction, similarly here also, your life can go in 100 ways, but it all depends on how you play. As you said, playing that role, if you know how to play your role well, then definitely you will be able to make most of that chance. And there are so many destinies for us to choose from. It's all in our hands. And the way Bhagawan, I think, this is one example. People have so many questions on karma every other day. Do we have free will? Do we have, how much of free will do we have? How much control we have?
The way you're repeating the word fixed. So many things about the match is fixed. But still the match is not fixed when you're allowed to play your game. Isn't it?
The final score is not
right,
fixed.
it's been fixed.
Nothing, and that's the beauty of Bhagawan's, these analogies and informal conversations. And I think, as we discussed in the previous episode also, a large body of Bhagawan's messages are there in this sweet, seemingly innocent conversations with Bhagawan, informal conversations, isn't it?
True. So I'm reminded of another incident. This happened in the portico, just next to the interview room. So this happened during Dashara time. So Gram Seva happens. So every day before the students go for Gram Seva, they will take Pradakshinam of Swami.
Yes.
So there was this boy who was standing behind Swami, and then boys were ready to go for Pradakshinam. So Swami immediately looked at him, caught hold of his hand, brought him next to Swami and then told him stay.
You're standing next to Swami.
So he was standing next to Swami and then told him stay beside Swami. The boys were going around for pradakshina. It's a huge entourage of boys in whites, beautifully going. And then Swami looked at him and said, Sira, if you catch hold of Swami and if you are with Swami, the entire world goes around you.
Oh.
Catch Swami, you will get everything else. So means in such a simple incident, he drives home the biggest message. And I'm also reminded of another beautiful experience of one of the brothers that happened inside the interview room. So this brother was sitting inside the interview room and there was this box in the interview room. This brother, in curiosity, opened the box and saw it was a brand new SLR camera. This happened many years back where we didn't have DSLR cameras. And so it was all real film cameras. Then Swami came in. He asked, Emira, the box. And he told Swami, the kotta camera, Swami. New camera, Swami. SLR camera. Oh, Swami, as if he didn't know anything, he was asking, okay, what is this? What does this do? And all those things. So in his excitement, this brother started taking out all the components of the camera, started assembling. Swami, this will go here, this will go here. Swami, this is lens. Swami. Then Swami asked, Amy, the pipe laga undi, that big tube lens. Then Swami, this is big lens, Swami, and then you can use it for focusing and for focusing far things, near things, etc. And then he assembled all the parts of the camera. He was holding the camera with the tube facing Swami, and Swami was sitting on the interview room chair. And then from there, Swami started playing with the buttons. Hey, what does this button do? What does this button do? What does this knob do? And all those things. And he was explaining constantly. Suddenly, Swami pressed one button and poof, came one flash. So, as the flash came, Swami's reaction was like this. Okay, so Swami asked, oh, what happened? So, did I do something wrong? Did I spoil the instrument? No, Swami, you just press the trigger, photo was captured. And Swami told, okay, manchidi. Take this, keep this camera with you. Take all nature photographs. Don't take photographs of people. Take nature photographs. Go explore. He was so happy because he was so passionate about photography. And then what we call as the photographic spree. He went the next day he got up early, went to Hanuman hilltop, clicked every possible angle, every possible photo. And then because they were all film camera, they had to be developed in Bangalore those days. So he gave his film, and then after the photos got developed and it reached him, and then the interesting thing about these film cameras is that the last photo that you have clicked will be the first photo that is developed, and the first photo that you have clicked will be the last photo that is developed. So when he started seeing, to his utter shock, all his photos were pathetic in terms of either some were blurred, some were smudgy, overexposure, underexposure. Nothing was clear except for one photograph, which was the first photograph which happened accidentally. And then this brother, the lesson that he took out of this experience is that when the world is your focus, everything is blur. But when you keep Swami as your focus, we get clarity. Such a beautiful message that comes out.
In fact, in the same lines about the world and Swami, both the experience that you narrated, this I think was the experience of one of our lecturers. I think his daughter had just got married and moved to the United States. So he was waiting to listen from her. Your daughter has gone away and you want to know if she's well settled, everything is fine. So one day as he was coming out for Swami's darshan in the afternoon, the postman came and handed him a letter. And it was from his daughter, so he was very excited. But it was time for Swami's darshan, so he didn't want to spend time reading it. He said, I'll go to Mandir and I'll read it in Mandir. So he goes and he sits in his place. And even as he opens the letter, darshan music starts. Swami comes out for that afternoon darshan. And he was reading the letter, and his daughter had written, Father, I'm very happy, I'm settled well. My husband is taking good care of me by Swami's grace. He's a very good man. I went to the center. The house is very comfortable by Swami's grace. So even as he was reading that, as a father, he became very emotional thinking about his daughter and also grateful that she is happy. Swami finished his round, came exactly to where this professor was sitting. And Swami looked at him and Swami said, where is the letter? So by then he had folded the letter away and he kept it. And he said, no, Swami, I have not written any letter. He said, not your letter, daughter's letter, Swami said. And even before he could react to that, Swami started telling what was there in the letter. Right? And Swami, the way he said it, by Swami's grace, she's happy. By Swami's grace, house is good. By Swami's grace, she got a job. By Swami's grace, this one. And Swami said, Manchiri. And then, even as Swami was moving away, Swami just stopped. And Swami said, see, you are sitting in front of Swami. You are thinking about the world and daughter, and you are having tears in your eyes. She is sitting thousands of miles away, thinking about Swami and feeling happy. So beautifully, Swami said, as long as your thoughts are centered on him, it doesn't matter where you are, how far you are physically, you will be happy, your life will be blissful. And in a passing, whenever I listen to episodes like this, how many thousands of people Swami would have, dropped pearls like this in casual conversations during his darshans. There's no way you can count all of them and collect all of them.
And while giving these lessons, so many times Swami would use so many tools. At times Swami would materialize stuff just so that this lesson remains in us as a vivid memory, isn't it?
Right. And the beautiful thing is, whenever Swami would materialize something, as we would discuss this as students, there will always be a punchline. You have to look out for that.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Yeah. So I think maybe we could quickly think of some lessons related to materializations. Though I think in the passing we did mention a few, like the diamond and things like that. Maybe anything that
Santosh,
comes to your
what
mind.
comes to your mind?
Okay, so this was a beautiful experience that happened in Kodaikanal. So this was again narrated to us by one of our teachers, Shailesh sir again. So in this particular Kodai visit, Swami had taken a couple of schoolboys as well. So sir was in the school that time teaching, so he also accompanied the Swami. Swami took him along, and then so they had gone to the hilltop for some photograph sessions, and while they were coming down, the two schoolboys were next to Swami, behind Swami, and then there was a bougainvillea creeper there. So Swami went there and then plucked out something from the creeper and showed it. And to everybody's utter shock, there were two plums from a bougainvillea creeper. Means it had the bougainvillea twigs, leaves, everything, but there were two plums. I'm sure the photo, many of you would have seen the photo. So Swami will hold these two plums, and then he broke the plum. The twigs were fresh. You can hear the crackling of the twigs when Swami broke it. And then he gave the two plums to the two schoolboys who were next to Swami. And then Swami told, eat. And then Swami went away. Then they were eating. They were chewing. When Sir was seeing, he felt like, come on, means plums will have seeds. At least throw out the seeds. Don't keep on eating it. And then the boys had such beautiful expression in their face. They were telling, Sir, these are not plums, these are chocolates. Means Swami materialized plums out of nowhere from the bougainvillea.
Chocolate into it out of nowhere.
And it became chocolate. And then Sir told a very beautiful lesson out of this materialization, where he says, from thorny bushes, Swami can pluck out or transform beautiful sweet fruits. And he also has the capability to remove the seeds of action. So in life, when we go through thorny patches of our lives, if we catch hold of Swami, he can transform any thorny experience into a very sweet experience, and he can also remove the seeds of action so that we don't get caught in the action of birth and rebirth. So this is...
Wow. I'm talking about removing the seeds of action. Is reminded of again something very interesting. Once, when Swami was speaking to the MBA students, Swami was talking about costing, and as it would happen at times, as he's explaining, he would materialize something just to give you a vivid experience of what he's trying to communicate. So Swami actually created a pen, a golden pen, because he was talking about costing and the different components which, when put together, come about the total cost, give you the total cost of a product. So in this whole process, Swami created this golden pen. And after Swami finished delivering the lesson, Swami gave this pen to a professor, and Swami told, you keep it. And a few days later, when Bhagawan had called this professor inside to the interview room, Swami asked, where is that pen? And he looked for it, he didn't have it. He said, Swami, I'm not having that pen now, Swami. So what this professor used to do is, if he knew that Swami is going to give a discourse, or then he would get that pen, because he wanted to, do sacred things with that pen. It's a sacred thing that Bhagawan has given. So he said, Swami, for ordinary work, I use a ball pen. So this is the pen normally used. So for spiritual work, I use that pen, Swami, and for normal work, I use this pen. That's how I have this pen. The Swami looked at him very intently, and Swami said, what is this? As if the expression of Bhagavan was, what is this? All work is spiritual. How are you dissecting something as spiritual work, ordinary work? How can you even have that kind of a mindset? And when you think about it, before we think about it, I should show you the pen.
Oh, wow.
That professor was very kind enough to actually share this pen. So this is actually the golden pen.
It's Swami materialized.
That Swami materialized, yeah.
It's quite big.
Yeah. Yeah, quite big, very beautiful one. But I think every time you hold a pen now, it'll keep ringing in your mind. Everything is spiritual. Everything is spiritual. Don't think that this is my work, or this is office work, this is housework, this is God's work, this is center work, so that is sacred, this is I'm doing for the boss, so this is unsacred. So I think, Swami does not want us to have that kind of distinctions. And I think if every activity that we do, if we do it with that spirit of worship, with that spirit of dedication, with that spirit of glorifying Him, then Swami says, just like 0 divided by 0 is 0, Swami says, if you do everything with that spirit of surrender, then the work does not attach itself to you. Then Swami says you don't have any debts. 0 divided by 0 is 0. That's how you will not have any karmic consequences. No debts, no disease, no bondage. True. And Swami says that is how you can actually lead a life which is, free, which is liberating. Because there is nothing that is binding. Because everything that you do it as an offering to the Lord. I think there's so many such powerful instances. I think, we can go on and on, because I remember in those veranda sessions, whenever Bhagawan used to come, be it in the Trai sessions, in the Trai Vrindavan, or in the sessions in the Prasanthi Nilayam Mandir, the interview is over and Swami there's still some time before the bhajans to start, and every day there would be occasions like this where Swami would do something very, very interesting. Somebody's ring would have, diamonds would have come out of the ring that Swami would have given. Swami would just take that and the diamonds would be back. And then Swami would say, nothing is everything. Everything is nothing. I mean, that is what we have seen, that beautiful Bhagawan who never lost any opportunity to teach us and ensure that we look at everything around us as a facet of His grace, as a facet of His creation, and use everything around us to divinize ourselves, isn't it?
True, brother. Very true. I remember actually once Swami had an interaction with students in Trai Vrindavan. It was an extended audience. So many students were seated there. And Swami posed a very interesting question that day. Swami asked the boys, I am planning to give away Sai Gita today. Who wants Sai Gita? Now, naturally, Sai Gita, as we all know, was Swami's pet elephant. So the boys were unsure whether to raise their hands or not, because, okay, Swami gives us Sai Gita. How will we maintain her? Who will provide her for the food, shelter, mahood? So many things to take care of. How will we do it? So people were a little shaky. Then after Swami prodded them a little bit, one boy raised his hand and said, Swami, I'll take Sai Gita. Then, to the surprise of everybody, Swami materialized a small crystal Sai Gita and gave it to the boy. And so all were thinking, we should have got this chance, man. We missed that opportunity. Then Swami said, Sira, when I offer you something, don't you have the faith in me that I will also give you the capacity to take care of it, maintain it? Don't you have that much faith? So the beautiful manner in which Swami explained the whole situation and rewarded the faith that the small boy had, I feel sometimes it is good to be little innocent kids.
True. In fact, when you mentioned about child's play, that's the first thought that came. If you can become really as innocent and pure as the child, then yes, spirituality is like child's play.
And because we're talking, I'm just very quickly reminded of a beautiful incident which happened in the hostel where Swami had come for lunch, and then all boys were seated, and then everybody was ready to chant Brahmarpanam. So there was this primary school kid who, to everybody's shock, everybody was ready to chant Brahmarpanam, and they started Brahmarpanam. This cute kid took his plate, went to Swami and showed his plate. It's like everybody is praying to God. Your God, I'm showing my plate. I'm offering it to you. Swami took, there was vada that day. Swami took one piece and then told, go, have food. And then he turned to the people sitting next to him, and then told, see, there was a chili in his vada, I removed. Similarly, when you offer it to me, I remove all the unpleasant things. So, such is the innocence and beauty when in that interaction, and it gives us a lot of lesson and strength on how to be with Swami.
Right. So, that's what it is with the master. Even a vada is a tool, even the pen is a tool, the handkerchief is a tool, letter, paper, everything is a tool. It finally comes down to how receptive you are to receive that message. And I think there are 3 or 4 stages if you can look at it. First of all, Swami has touched our lives. He's inspired love in the heart. How do we express that love? I think you'll have to turn to the message, try to look for ways to please him in that message. The next step is, what does that do to us?
Yes.
Right? I think as final thoughts, that's probably what we should think of. Yes, we've engaged with Swami's message. Yes, we've tried it out in our own life. How do we really know that that impact is there? Any thoughts on that? And probably we'll conclude with around that.
Brother, actually, when I look at Swami's teachings, and sometimes they seem to be too profound, too deep, as Brother Santosh mentioned in the beginning, do I have the capacity to rise up to Swami's expectations? These kind of doubts always keep propping up within us. And not just that, our energy levels, our enthusiasm to follow Swami's teachings might not be the same. I'll tell you my own personal example. In my first year MBA, when I had joined, of course, Suprabhatam was there in hostel. I found it very difficult to get up for Suprabhatam in the morning because my schedule before joining Swami's system was quite different. I used to get up quite late. But the initial enthusiasm of being a Swami student was so great that the first few months went on very smoothly. I was getting up for Suprabhatam early in the morning. I was chanting very diligently. Then after a few months, this initial enthusiasm died down. Then I thought, okay, let me skip once in a week. Then it so happened that after a few weeks, I skipped one entire week of Suprabhatam and I slept nicely. Then after 7 days, Swami came in my dream. And it was, I remember very vividly, Swami was sitting in front of me and he looked at me and asked, Emira, Suprabhatam velatledu, meaning,
Oh my God.
what? And aren't you going for Suprabhatam? Obviously, I didn't have any answer to Swami. Then what Swami said later actually still fills me with a lot of love and reverence for Swami, because Swami said, see, na kosamaina Suprabhatam velu, which means for at least my sake you go for Suprabhatam. I feel that love, tenderness kind of exemplifies Swami's teachings in a minuscule, if I can put it that way. In our lives, for sure, there will be jumps and bumps, as Swami keeps telling. There will be difficulties. We might not follow Swami's teachings for a while. But if we go back and remind ourselves of the kind of love that Swami has for us and connect to that Swami's love, I feel that anytime we'll be ready to follow Swami's teachings.
I think that is amazing. And I'm reminded of what Brother Santosh you mentioned, about if only we can think about that love, and that love is what gives us power, isn't it?
True. And when I think about Swami, his first teaching to entire mankind was Manasa Bhajare Guru Charanam. So, and then there is another question that keeps coming up. Now that Swami is not there, how do I connect with him? Is it that only those few fortunate people who have had physical interactions with Swami are they the only noble souls or blessed souls? Yeah, they are blessed, but is it what the avatar stood for? No, because that's what his first message symbolizes. Manasa Badare Guru Charanam. Charanam doesn't always mean physical feet. It means the footsteps of your master, footsteps of God. So walk in his footsteps, walk his talk. So, and we have been discussing about his teachings, and there will come times where we feel we are not up to the mark, we feel low, but it's the love that we have for Swami, and we must have the confidence and the faith in Swami. Again, let me just conclude with a beautiful, again, childlike experience. This happened in Trai Vrindavan, and there was this primary school boy who was seated. Swami called him and asked, "Are you a good boy or a bad boy?" This boy said, "Swami, good boy." "How do you know that you are a good boy? How do you say that you are a good boy?" Then this brothers told that, "Swami, sometime back when you were talking to us, you only said that if parents are good, the child will also be good. You are my divine mother and father. I know you are good, so I am also good." So that kind of a confidence means, it is a nice incident. But when we think deeply into it, do we have that kind of a confidence in Swami?
Yes.
As we say, he doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the call. So, and I'm also very attached to this beautiful name of the mother that comes in Lalita Sahasranama. Avyaja Karuna Murti Ajnana Dvanta Deepika. So she is ocean of compassion. So whatever we do, however mistakes, how many ever times we fall, Swami is ready to pick us up and set us on the right path. And Swami's message is it is not restricted to those times. It is ever refreshing, and every time, as you said, every time we look at the message, there is another new learning for us. And I think that is what love is, the source, path, and the destination, and our force and energy to travel along that journey.
Talking about this question that often comes to our mind, which you made a passing reference to, now that we don't physically have Swamis to give us direct message, that is, I think, only in our mind, right? The fact that Swami isn't, it's all in our mind. Reminded of a very beautiful episode when we were talking about Swami's message and following it. It was during the 1996 when Swami was giving a series of discourses, right? All of a sudden, Swami stopped one day, and Swami made an announcement saying that exams are coming for the students, so I'm stopping. But what was happening behind the walls, so to say, is that Swami was upset with the students. Because Swami said that I'm going on talking, what is the point? Nobody listens. And I don't find any reason to go on. And Swami was very upset, and then it was conveyed to the students. The students, as you all know, in the hostels, they started doing their own sadhana. So there was this one student, it was from the 11th standard. He had just joined a couple of months ago. So he wrote a letter to Swami. And 4 pages, both sides, right? He wrote this letter to Swami saying that, "Swami, why are you not talking to us? And this is not fair," and all that. And he gave it to Swami in the portico. Swami was not taking letters that day. But for whatever reason, this boy sat in the portico with that letter. Swami came straight to him, took the letter. Swami went inside the interview room. Not even 2 minutes, he came out, right? And he came and he asked, "Where is Arjuna? Where is Arjuna?" Okay. And then Swami came to this boy who had given the letter, and Swami said, "Are you Arjuna?" So he thought that there was another classmate of his whose name was Arjun. So he thought maybe Swami is asking about him. He said, "Swami, you were sitting somewhere here." Swami said, "Where is that Arjuna who wrote in the letter?" Then it occurred to him, in those 4 pages, back and forth, somewhere he had made a mention of Arjuna. Right? And he had written so beautifully. He said, "Swami, we understand that you're upset with us because we're not mending our ways, we're doing the wrong things. But Krishna did not give the Gita to Arjuna because he is correct. He gave the Gita because he was wrong." Right? He said, "If you find us doing mistakes, that is all the more reason why you should talk to us. And you should not stop talking to us." He said, then Swami kept on asking him, "Where's that Arjuna who wrote in the letter?" He said, "Swami, it was me." And then Swami patted him, pretty forcefully. And Swami said, "Repeat after me." And Swami said, "Karishye." He said, "Karishye. Vachanam, Vachanam, Tava." And Swami said it 3 times and made that boy repeat. Patted him, like blessing him, and Swami went away. So thereafter, that name Arjuna stuck to him. Yes. But many years later, I think this was in his 11th standard, and when he was in his master's, one day he had the opportunity to be in the interview room with Swami, and Swami said, "Any questions you want to ask?" And this boy related this whole episode that had happened when he was in 11th standard. And he said, Swami, I don't understand why Swami did that. Swami said, ask me to repeat Karishye Vachanam Tava. Then Swami asked him, what did you write in the letter? And he said the whole thing. He said, Swami, you should correct us, and that's why you should talk to us. And Swami said, do you think Krishna simply gave the Gita to Arjuna? Arjuna first made the promise, Karishye Vachanam Tava. Whatever you say, I will follow. So he was given the Gita. And then Swami went on to say, if you want to receive my message, make the commitment, make the promise that Swami, I will live by what you say. And then you will get my message. Right? So it is one point you can keep and say that now we don't receive Swami's message. Now Swami is not talking to us. I think if you make that promise, if you make that commitment, who can stop Swami from coming and telling you what needs to be done and guiding you personally?
Absolutely. I think all that needs is that genuine intent. And he will fill us with all the inspiration. And we will get all the inspiration because of our love for him.
True.
And in fact, Bhagawan very beautifully once says, I keep saying love all, serve all, love all, revere all. Swami said, if not anything, if you just speak sweetly, speak softly, and speak in a manner that is of benefit to the others, at least do this much. Swami says, if you do this sincerely, then the very spot where you are standing, that spot will become as holy as Kashi. If you can speak softly, sweetly, and in a manner that is not hurting to the other person, Swami said, your words will become as holy as the scriptures. And you will just be radiating his love. I think, if not anything, this is what we can definitely do, and not miss this beautiful opportunity to take these beautiful steps on his 96th birthday. I think there is no better way to celebrate his birthday than to make our lives fashion in a manner that when Bhagawan looks at us, he feels proud. He feels, wow, here is someone who is making that effort to live the life the way I wanted them to lead. Here is someone who is loving and serving others the way I was doing. I spent 86 years trying to teach them how to love and serve. And here is someone who is putting that effort, sincere effort, in that right direction. And I'm here to pull him by his hand. I'm here to walk that 99 steps, and he will lift us, and we will find our lives really uplifted. We will end with that beautiful bhajan of Bhagawan. He mentioned about Manasa Bhajare Guru Charanam. Swami in every discourse used to end in many of his discourses with this bhajan, Manas, Hari Bhajana Vina Sukha Shanti Nahi. And I think that bhajan is again one bhajan where his entire message is so beautifully encapsulated. And every time we listen to any facet of Bhagavan's teaching, his discourse is filled with so many things. If not anything, something, at least take this bhajan and let the beautiful message that is conveyed in this bhajan ring in our ears, and let our lives become just a saga of his glory, his melody, and his love. Thank you so much for being with us. It was a really very beautiful, enriching experience, a beautiful sadhana for all of us. And we're so happy there are boys from the hostel joining us. And we hope that it was of service to you. Do let us know what kind of satsangs you would like from us, so that it will help us spiritualize our lives and make us one day one with Swami. Thank you so much. Sai Ram.
भजन बिना सुख शांति नहीं, हरि भजन बिना सुख शांति नहीं, हरि नाम बिना आनंद नहीं, हरि नाम बिना आनंद नहीं, हरि नाम बिना, हरि भजन बिना सुख शांति नहीं, जप जान बिना तन योग नहीं, जप जान बिना योग नहीं, प्रभु दर्श बिना प्रज्ञान नहीं, दय धर्म बिना सत्कर्म नहीं, भगवान बिना कोई अपना नहीं, हरि नाम बिना परमात्मा नहीं, हरि नाम बिना परमात्मा नहीं, हरि भजन बिना शांति नहीं, हरि भजन बिना हरि नाम बिना आनंद नहीं, हरि नाम बिना आनंद नहीं, हरि भजन बिना हरि नाम बिना आनंद नहीं, हरि भजन बिना सुख शांति नहीं, सुख शांति नहीं, सुख शांति नहीं।